when Jesus talks to his disciples, he tells them, go to the ends of the earth. And he says, it's happening. It's started. New creation is happening with me. Heaven and earth have united in me. It's the kingdom of God is here in your presence. Now go to the ends of the earth.
This is the God in All Things podcast, rooted in Ignatian spirituality and seeking the presence of God in the everyday. Here's Andy Otto.
Tim Mackie and Jon Collins are co-founders of the Bible Project, which produces short-form animated videos that succinctly explain the books and themes of the Bible. They say the best way to understand the Bible is to look at its overarching narratives. Tim holds a PhD in Semitic languages and biblical studies, is a pastor, and also an adjunct professor at Western Seminary. Jon Collins holds a BA in biblical studies and has also served as a pastor. He's worked the last decade in digital media and marketing. This is part one of my conversation with Tim and Jon on a few of the Ignatian themes that we can find in the Bible.
I'm Jon Collins, and my role, I'm one of the co-founders, so Tim and I both co-founded the Bible Project, and I'm running the show in terms of the operations day to day. My background is in animation and video and the whole production process therein. And so I manage a lot of that. And then we both direct and we both write.
Yeah, I'm Tim Mackie, also co-founded the Bible Project. My other lives are being a pastor and a professor and just an all-around Bible history nerd. So for the Bible Project, I mostly do research and then writing and kind of co-directing with Jon, but all pretty much on the front end of the creative process for the videos that we make.
I love that your videos, you sort of take a more intellectual route, given your backgrounds, but you don't sanitize or remove the wonder and mystery of the Christian story and of Scripture. So I'm curious, what led you both to start the Bible Project and to come up with this idea?
Well, it was a lot of things. I think as we look back, there were many factors. Jon and I met each other in college at a Christian Bible college. So, we both had an interest in biblical studies for ending up there in the first place. But a big thing for me was an early introduction into the literary beauty and design and the very literary artistic nature of the biblical books. And so that was just a mind-blowing whole new set of categories for me. And like all good literature provokes as much as it tries to influence and teach you something. And good literature takes you through an experience as a part of what it's trying to do in forming you and shaping you. So to me, that's just a part and parcel of what the Bible is it's literature, narrative, and poetry with a profound theological message. But it's also trying to mess with you. And so that's just the nature of what the Bible is. And we wanted to try and bring people into that story and these poems and at least try and recreate that experience for people. Most people encounter the Bible in church settings where it's very didactic and very black and white. And so we wanted to create something that gets people into the aesthetic beauty of the Bible, and the videos have been a fun medium to do that.
I want to start with your explanation on heaven and earth, because I think this connects well with the Ignatian idea of finding God in all things. And I think, traditionally Christians imagine heaven simply as this place we go to die, as long as we've been good people. Have we been getting this all wrong?
One of the first videos we did was Heaven and Earth. I think it was the
second one we were working on.
Second script we were writing. And I remember the first thing that Tim sat down and we talked about was just the word heaven in Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And that Hebrew word literally meaning the sky. And then immediately I start drilling them with questions like, well wait, does that mean that the biblical authors thought God lived in the sky? Because that's exactly where I go. this verse is talking about where God lives, where we're all going to go when we die, this place that I have firmly planted in my brain from Sunday school. And so it was a slow kind of shifting my paradigm of talking about, well, the sky is this transcendent place, and when you look up and you see how different it is from the earth, and how we have our space here that we're familiar with, but the sky, we depend on it for the rain. We don't know how it works. We can't live up there. It's this place above us, and if we're going to say God lives somewhere, we that's the place where we put it. and then going, but does God just live in the sky? And then going through all the scriptures of God being in the temple, and then God being everywhere, and nothing can contain him. And you begin to see this really rich understanding in the Hebrew scriptures of God's transcendence and God's space being everywhere and then intersecting with ours. And so I had to go through my own kind of mind-boggling transformation of thinking in a new category, which turns out to be really biblical and really Jewish and really Christian, but isn't the paradigm that I was given. I was given a very simple black and white understanding of heaven and earth. So yeah, I think we've been missing it, at least in my tradition. I grew up in an evangelical tradition, and for a lot of other people that I know, I think we're missing it.
Well, it's funny because you just do a Google image search for heaven and you see sky and clouds. So we've certainly held on to that.
Yeah, and that's not it's not without good reason. That's because the word is used in two overlapping ways. It just means sky, simply. It's the basic word for sky. And so when the biblical authors want to give us an image for the nature of God's transcendence and otherness and how he rules over all, you think up, way up high. But that's not the only way that the biblical authors envision talking about God's presence. And so I think that's where the hang-up is that in our thinking, we've just gotten stuck on literalizing the image of God being in the sky.
But yeah, to your point, I still hear, in fact, I heard on the radio the other day someone referring to the sky as the heavens, and in the plural, which in Hebrew it's always plural.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that's still in our vocabulary to talk about the heavens as literally the sky.
Yeah.
And most of the time when you read the word, I think it's most, I don't know if you know, Tim, but I felt like a predominant amount of the time when it's the word heaven in the Old Testament, it's literally referring to the sky. You could just replace that and say the sky, and that's what it means.
Yeah, usually the psalmist will say something like, God rules in the heavens over all the earth, or something like that. But the point is his transcendence, not that you can actually go take a rocket up to God's space. And
his throne is in the sky. So he has this heavenly, transcendent throne. But if you go into space, you're not going to literally find it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I don't think so.
You talk about the intersection of heaven and earth, beautifully illustrated in the video. I wonder how did I guess sort of a two-part question. How much of Jesus's mission was this meeting of heaven and earth? Because certainly, Christ, God incarnate, is clearly a little bit of heaven here on earth, but. I also wonder how much that connects with sort of what I would call God moments where, experiencing God in a sunset or, in a baby or things like that. How much of that is an intersection, or is that kind of more of a contemporary understanding of an intersection of heaven and earth?
It's a good point. The Bible has so many ways of talking about this. The primary one we trace down in the heaven and earth video is temples. That's a dominating theme, which is about a specific space. There are specific places on earth that are sacred and where heaven and earth meet, typically in temples, but not always. Jacob can stumble upon one in the middle of the night in a field, in a place where he meets God in a dream. So there's definitely that whole thing, but that temple imagery really is a big, big idea in the New Testament. And it's so big, Jesus is described as the temple embodied in human being. And
Destroy
then,
this temple and I'll build it in 3 days.
Yeah, or John, as we quote in the video, John saying about Jesus, he set up a temple. He set up a tabernacle, a meeting place of heaven and earth. And then that temple theme goes right through into Jesus's vision of what his community, the community of his followers are. It's the place where when they're gathered together, he's in their midst. And it's the book of Acts, oh my goodness, is all about depicting the community of Jesus as a temple, as the place where heaven and earth meet as Jesus' people. That's why little flames pop up over their heads when when God's presence comes to dwell in each of them as a temple, and then collectively as a temple. So I think the way the Bible talks about it is often through this temple language, the language of spirit, God's Spirit inhabiting his people. And then, so yes, your question is, what about these other moments, though, where we sense transcendence or sacredness? And that is also really important for the biblical authors. Like Psalm 104 can talk about, you go out in a field and you watch deers giving birth, or you watch animals. Or he says, consider a ship sailing on the sea. And he says, you will see God's handiwork. He says, look at the handiwork of God. Go look at sea creatures and this and that. Look at the ships on the sea. So he even sees humans producing ships as a part of God's presence and work in the world. So the biblical authors didn't have this division, I think, between sacred and secular, or mundane and holy. As the Apostle Paul puts it, in God we live and move and breathe and have our being. And so he had a worldview where the transcendent overlaps the mundane in every arena of life. It's very profound, and it's very non-Western.
Yeah, you had talked about how the Garden of Eden is this place, this moment where there was really no distinction between heaven and earth. The sort of original plan, original project of God. Obviously, this was interrupted by us, humans. But, it certainly seems that, Christ's mission was to restore that intersection, to continue that original project of God. I wonder what do the scriptures say, or how do the scriptures speak to our role in that sort of restoration of God's original project of that intersection?
I'll take a stab at it. Tim, you can
Yeah, sure.
help out. Tim's the real scholar here. But the vocational role of humans in the garden was to subdue the earth and multiply. And so go to the very ends of the earth and expand the goodness of this garden. Like, that was our initial task. And then that was all foiled. We're kicked out of the garden. And when God comes to Abraham and he gives the blessing, he says, he's renewing the blessing that he originally was given to humanity in the garden, and he tells Abraham he's going to bless all the nations. So already we get this idea of this blessing will expand to the ends of the earth, and we know that's the role of Israel, is to be a blessing to the nations. And then when Jesus talks to his disciples, he tells them, go to the ends of the earth. And he says, it's happening. It's started. New creation is happening with me. Heaven and earth have united in me. It's the kingdom of God is here in your presence. Now go to the ends of the earth. And I think it's the same. It's the same calling, and then that's what we see happen in Acts. So that's our part of it. Is the kingdom of God was inaugurated with Jesus in a really special way, and new creation birthed and began, and it's not complete yet, and it will be complete one day. And our part of it is to then go and to expand that into to the ends of the earth. And so for me personally, I'm not going to some far out place in the middle of nowhere to do that, but I'm here in Portland, and I want to see the kingdom of God expand in the neighborhoods I live in the businesses that I'm a part of, and the relationships that I have. I want the kingdom of God to get soaked into that and to become a part of that, so that new creation is birthed around. And because I believe that started with Jesus and will continue on until all things are new.
Part 2 of my conversation with Tim and Jon will continue on our next podcast. To learn more about the Bible Project, you can visit jointhebibleproject.com, where you can deepen your appreciation of the Bible and view their videos and also contribute to their next video. And for more on Ignatian spirituality, visit godinallthings.com.